deterrence and cooling down the situation, Sadiq Khan, to me, seems gleefully trying to reignite the inferno just as we had got it under control.
There's absolutely an argument that he and what he is saying is being more divisive, as indeed it could be argued Keir Starmer has been. In terms of Keir Starmer's 3 speeches now, I think over the last 7 days or so, where he has called out the so-called far right, and the inference being that anybody on a march that's protesting because they are concerned about the state of Britain, anybody and everybody on one of those marches as a protester is therefore deemed as far right. Now, that is not right. Now, is there a far right element? Yes, there is. Are they behaving disgracefully and in criminality terms? Yes, they are, and that is to be absolutely condemned. But to try and gaslight us and whitewash us that anybody that protests about anything of a concern that relates to immigration, particularly illegal immigration, and any crime relating to said immigration is somehow far right, a thug, and so on. That is disgraceful, because what it does then, and this is where we're getting to, I'm afraid, Alex, is we're getting towards a tyrannical position where those that just want to have debate and discourse, like you and I are having now, effectively, first of all, gets frowned upon, then it gets censored and banned, and then all of a sudden, not just people on social media start being imprisoned, but how about broadcasters and journalists that don't toe the line?
But this
are they
has been
next?
Going on a while, OK? So the way I look at this is when there were concerns about the lack of integration or minority communities being left behind, being disadvantaged, when we saw the Croydon riots and people said, well, these young black guys don't have the same opportunities, they're not sort of as part of society, which is why they're frustrated and getting angry, and what must we do to make sure they feel included? No one is saying that about the white working classes. They're not allowed to feel that way. And we're told again and again and again that immigration has been a net positive. When you look at the unemployment figures in the towns that have seen rioting, it's not. These people don't have jobs anymore. The army's half the size. Heavy industry is gone. The production lines are automated, and even when they are manned, they're usually manned by cheaper foreign labour from overseas. And this cohort of men have been left behind. Not only have they been left behind, but the things they used to enjoy. You know, Jim Davidson's comedy, the local pub where you'd get a cheap pint that now only sells a £25 gin and tonic in a vase with half the garden in it. That's been taken away from them as well. And then on top of that, when they said we don't like this, they are called every name under the sun. They're called gammon, they're called thick, they're called racist. They are despised by the middle classes. And they say they've tried, haven't they, at the ballot box on numerous occasions to say this needs to change, whether it's voting Conservative 3 times, whether it was voting for Brexit. They've tried all democratic means. And even then they were told, well, Nigel Farage is a bogeyman brainwashing you. You know, forget the fact that the street where you live has changed in complexion enormously over the past 20 years. And you can see that because you live on that street.
Yeah. So the subject of immigration is being demonised as a subject in itself. Now, should we be talking about the advantages and disadvantages of immigration? Yes, we should. Are there advantages? Yes, of course there are. But where we should be as a nation, as many are, is a nation that controls its immigration and decides who comes to these shores. Should we have immigration? Absolutely yes, but we should decide on merit. But the fact that we have a significant problem with immigration, particularly illegal immigration, is something now that, because there have been consequences, whether they be economic, whether they be crime, whether they be social, cultural, in terms of multiculturalism arguably not having worked, it's been a disaster, and we can see that on our streets right now. The fact that we are being deterred from having the conversation even about immigration really doesn't help solve the problem.
It's worse than this, though. We talk about the censorship, we talk about two-tier policing, we've sort of touched upon the idea there could potentially be two-tier justice, but it's two-tier morality. And I think all of a sudden the white working classes have realised that they are going to always be at the bottom of the list, and I'll explain why I think that. When these people go abroad on holiday to Spain and they don't speak Spanish and they want to have full English breakfast and fish and chips, they're brutes and they're yobs. But when immigrants come to their communities who don't speak English and want to eat food from home, that is cultural enrichment and diversity. Two-tier morality. Now, the people who used to stand up for the working classes, who actually built career off the back of being their champions, I'm thinking of Owen Jones, who wrote that seminal book, Chav. Well, he now thinks that they're Islamophobes and racists and monsters and idiots who have somehow all been hypnotised by Elon Musk and Nigel Farage. There's nobody left for them. Nobody likes them. And they're responsible for everything. And there's only so much that you can throw at male pride and dignity. You can take away their jobs. You can take away their comedy. You can change their pubs. You can change their communities and their neighbourhoods. You can call them every name under the sun. But what we have now done is also taken away a voice.
Well, yes.
And that's where we've ended up.
Well, what we seem to have done as authorities, maybe not as a society, but certainly when it comes to politicians, civil service and the police and the judiciary, in this quest to look balanced and to promote diversity and equality, you could argue that we've gone too far the other way.
So, of course we have.
So in terms of, this ridiculous phrase, Alex, it's positive discrimination, it's for the best. No, all discrimination is discrimination, yes. So is it possible to be racist in your approach towards white people? Well, unfortunately, in law, no, unless you're Welsh or Scottish, I guess. But it's not deemed that we can be disadvantaged if you're white.
There have been no quotas or no schemes to make sure that 50% of boards in big companies in London come from the white working classes. There have been no special projects to make sure white working class people from Sunderland and Hartlepool can get jobs in the BBC. Even the sort of support we used to give to these people to get them into education, and I don't mean the university trap, where you end up running up a load of debt to then not get a job. I'm talking about technical colleges attached to industries. I mean, for years now, the decimation of the labour force in preference for cheaper labour has just been going on and on. It was builders, it was plumbers. My father was a lorry driver, and he was a Thatcherite. Well, he still is a Thatcherite. He's still with us, thankfully. And he ended up joining the union and sort of leading stuff because his complaint was they kept bringing in more and more workers from Eastern Europe, and his wages went down, and he was penalised and persecuted for that. And we struggled as a family. We couldn't go on holidays. We couldn't buy new clothes because of this. So anyone who tells me that this is not true, that I'm being gaslit and I've just been hanging out with Nigel Farage too much, I'm sorry. It's happened to me. And this is what's going on around the country. The white working classes are saying, you're not listening, you're telling us we've gone balmy. You are gaslighting us, but it's happening to us. We see this.
Yeah, this is not a question of even right versus left. This is a question, in my view, in terms of the solution to this, being one of just simple equality and balance in the everyone and everything, so whether it be the judiciary, the way that police handle people, the way that council houses are dished out, the way that shoplifters are dealt with, should simply be done. And here's the solution, and it's going to sound overtly simple, but just deal with everyone and everything in a balanced, equitable and even-handed way.
That
is the solution. We don't have to overtly demonstrate by way of some political optics that we're not racist by dealing with one particular sector of society in a more lenient way than another. That just creates more problems.
Exactly. In the words of Martin Luther King, I hope to live in a nation where one day my children will not be judged by the colour of their skin, but by the content of their character. Going to take a short break now. Remember, you can let us know your thoughts throughout the programme. 0344499 is the number. 499 forgot the last few digits. If you want to call and join the conversation, we usually have our special spot reserved. The last 15 minutes of every hour is when we all sit around our pub table in our beer garden, metaphorically, and chew the cud together. But you can register your interest in joining that conversation at any point, really. Or you can use that number to send a WhatsApp, 03444991000. You can leave me a voice note as well. I love hearing your dulcet tones with all your gorgeous accents. Text me 87222, put talk before your message. Tweet me on X at TalkTV. Taking a short break now, but don't go anywhere because there is still so much to talk about together. Back after this.